You remind me of a quote, and I think it was by Lao Tzu, the Chinese philosopher, something like, when the student is ready, the teacher will appear.
Life flows where your thinking goes.
Yes.
And so because of that, we have a future focused sort of program. We don't really dredge the past up because what's the point? So there's not one person who passes your life that isn't a teacher to you. But they're hidden in disguise as another person, right? But in essence, we're all one, right?
Mm.
And so if we're all one, then there has to be a connection between the people in your life because they're in your life for reasons. I enjoy being, perfectly imperfect. I enjoy being human, knowing full well that I don't know why I'm here, and I reckon it's a good thing because,
Keep searching.
we're in the veil of forgetfulness.
Welcome, Team ET, to another episode of the ET Project, where we explore stories on resilience, passion, transformational leadership, if you like. And today we're thrilled to have Richard Maloney, founder of Quality Mind Global. Richard's journey from overcoming, let's say, some tough challenges during his childhood, teenage years, to harnessing his natural talent. I'll talk more about that, through Australian rules football, is nothing short of inspiring. He's challenged his experiences into a mission to improve well-being and performance on a global scale, which I love. So, Team ET, let me share you a little confidence before we get into the conversation with Rich. When I was first made aware that I was going to have a chance to sit down with Rich, my immediate thought was of a potential clash of the football codes. So my background is
Yeah.
rugby, Rich comes from Aussie rules. I thought, man, this could be a clash of the Titans, right? Two Aussies sitting down, battling out different codes. However, as I started to dig into, who is this guy and what's his background, his achievements, his approach to life and business in general, I realized just how many similarities we shared through our own journey, and how much respect I have for this guy in what he's doing. So I can honestly say that I'm super pumped for this conversation. So team, please join me in welcoming Rich to the show as we dive into his incredible story and discover some powerful lessons, probably about adaptability and vision as much as anything. And one of my favorites is the thing that I read about in his book. It's a thing that he refers to as our two minds. So, Rich, with that, welcome to the ET Project. Great to have you on the show, my friend.
Well, Wayne, having known that you're from the other code, I was very excited. Now we're going to have to call it a quick show, buddy. But no, I'm really excited to be here. Thanks for the opportunity and the invitation, and happy to get underway.
Yeah, perfect. As our listeners are going to be able to hear, they're listening to two Australians talking. So this is we'll probably drop into some Aussie slang as we get into the conversation. But here's a true story for everybody. About, I don't know, an hour and a half ago, before we hit the record button, Rich messaged me. Basically said, "Hey Wayne, I'm trying to prep for today's chat and I want to be at my best for the listeners, but pal, I've got no idea what you want to talk about." Right? And the reason that Rich was in the dark was because as of this morning, I was suddenly unclear myself. Now, don't get me wrong, I have a standard routine I follow. I start by always doing my research, and then what I try and do is I try and align my own background in some way, shape, or form to suit with the guests, right? So all good so far. We come from Australia, we're a similar code or similar footy background sort of thing. That was all good. And then about 9 p.m. last night, as I'm wrapping up my preparation for today, I come across Rich's book called Stress Free. So this is 9 p.m. And I thought, okay, there's a challenge, but not a major, if anything, probably going to help our conversation. And then this morning, I'm out for my morning walk. And lo and behold, I happened across a podcast that Rich was a guest on in August. And by the way, for any of the listeners, do yourself a favor, have a listen to it. It's called the Overly Excited Podcast. A couple of Aussie lads host the podcast. I have never laughed so much in the last year. I was in stitches. However, the consequence of that was, have you ever seen a presenter standing on stage? They've got their cards full of questions. They're ready to address the audience. And they have this epiphany that, you know what, this is not what I actually want to talk about. And that's what happened to me after listening to this podcast, Rich. So here we are now. I've listened to it. I've gone down memory lane. I'm still stuck there in my mind, and we're about to start our conversation. So here we go. And apologies for that long-winded intro there, Rich, but that's literally what happened to me. So I thought I'd just share it. I have to say I'm pretty exhausted right now. So take over.
Where do you want to go, Wayne? Lovely to meet the listeners, and I emailed Wayne deliberately because it's all about you, the listener. So I'll give you as much as I can in this short little while, and looking forward to have this little conversation.
Yeah, excellent, my friend. Let's start with, you know, where we normally go. If you don't mind telling us a little bit about the journey. Anything that you feel is relevant in the lead up to where you are now with the business and the way the business is operating, whether that's your childhood, your teenage years, your football, whatever it might be.
Well, I guess, you know, I'm in the game of mental wellness. So Quality Mind is a mental wellness technology, IP, and coaching company. So we have a group of 47 coaches now from 8 countries, and they more or less follow my systems, use our technology to help everyday people, a lot of executives, mums and dads, young athletes, transform the way they process reality and really reach their dreams far quicker. So here I am, 49 years old, 3 beautiful daughters living in the Bayside of Melbourne. And people say to me, Rich, what gives you the right to work in this space when you didn't even finish school? You know, so more or less, I was a young man coming through the AFL system, was always going to get possibly picked up by a AFL club. I did. But prior to that, I had a lot of challenges. I didn't fit in society. I went to a grammar school. They caned me weekly. I combated the system. I was one of those young men who always asked the question, why, what for, what is, you know, I need proof, and so forth. So you could say back in those days, I caused quite a stir. My report cards were always C, C plus, happy to get a B. And because I more or less was bored. Sport was an outlet for me, and it played a critical role. And then I went, as I grew up, I sort of hit the skids pretty hard there. I got asked to leave one school, got asked to leave another school, and then I nearly committed myself into the end of life scenario on a couple of occasions. So there was a line in the sand moment at the age of 16, 17, where I convinced myself not to. I knew the tree, I knew had the rope. I was on my way out, and whatever reason I didn't. And then I went to St Kilda as a young athlete, which is in the AFL here, and quickly demoralized. You could say I wasn't mentally ready to cope with the pressures, and I wasn't mentally resilient up until then anyway. And so once that ended, I had a whole identity shift. I didn't know which way to go. So I took the surfboard, grabbed the red heeler dog and the blue van, and shot off to Queensland and surfed and played football at semi-professional level. And that's where it began. And so I went to a stage after I was going to knock myself into that stage of what am I here for? Who the hell am I? And what is this human existence all about? And so then I just followed the breadcrumbs, actually, Wayne, and was going to, understand religion, quantum physics, understand all aspects of existence. Hanging out at retreats and having mentors and gurus and reading book. And the first time I've read a book actually went to the New Age bookstore, and I was hiding this because I was so concerned that my mates at the football club would know that I'm meditating in groups. And as you can see, I'm a redhead, and so we didn't mind a bit of a fight or a punch on occasionally back in the day. And so I was really heading down a wrong path until I figured it out that there was a bit more to life. And so that gives you a start of how it started. And then I fell in love with the mind. I fell in love with like how to unhack myself,
Mhm.
and then it just kept working away at it over the course of the years, and then I just started to become a coach after lot of success, and in my sporting career at the semi-professional level, and
Right.
working at quite a few elite teams, and then it just unfolded, and here I am at Quality Mind. This is my second company. I've built and sold another employee engagement business, which to an American company, when that was quite simply systemizing sports championships,
Mhm.
realizing Australia was too small, and then I partnered with an American company, and they bought it off me in the end. And we had 700 licensees following my system. So I was traveling 4 months of the year with interpreters and in training rooms for a long time. And so now we're here with Quality Mind, and it's probably at the right time. I think you'd agree with the way the world's going, and it's about having fun. It's about not taking life too seriously, but having enough nous to go, hang on, I haven't got what I want right now. Why is that?
Mm.
Um, I'm not entirely happy with the way I process reality, and my friendships and my money and my wealth and my health and these sorts of things. So we help people put the jigsaw puzzle of the mind together very quickly, and we use technology along the way. Does that give you a bit of a starter?
Beautiful, beautiful. There's so many threads there that we can pull on. Let's go
Mm,
before we jump deep into the business and start talking about it in
mm,
more detail. Let's explore more around the football period. I think you were talking at the end there, or that transition started when you moved to Southport, right? So I'm a
mm.
Brizzy boy. I grew up on the north coast, not the south coast of Brisbane, so not the Gold Coast, but I had
No,
relatives
no,
in Southport,
yeah.
so I know where you were and where you were
Mm, mm.
playing. Um, what was life like? Like you talked about, it didn't turn out the way you expected. What was that about?
Yeah, it was a time of uncertainty, but it was also a time of excitement because I had forged myself a new path, and the new path was laid with excitement, and because I was heading down a road never traveled, and that is into a
Mm,
spiritual aspect,
right.
into a quantum physics aspect, into a mental wellness aspect, um, and it's just I was quite lost too, you could say, because when you start down this, people call it a new agey sort of path.
Mm,
I just call an introspective path, is you probably don't have your feet on the ground so much,
right.
and so you've got to get grounded. But it was exciting, Wayne, because I was on my own. I
Yep.
had to take full responsibility, because I was in a lot of fights as a kid. I was in a gang. I was locked up a lot on the weekends, only for silly stuff, nothing significant.
Yeah.
Um, and it got a bit boring after a while. And so I had to grow up, and I decided to grow up. In fact, my
Right.
grandmother played a significant role in that, helping me with some sharpshooting conversations, and then I just more or less went, right, I want to take control of my life. So I got to the age of 27, 28. I was
Mm,
like, what am I going to do? And I went to a futurist. The futurist helped me unpack that, and I didn't know exactly what it was, but I was taught not to worry about the how or when, just know where you're heading roughly,
right.
right? So, and I knew roughly I wanted to head in this space, but wouldn't have known that I've done it the way I've done it.
Mm,
And It hasn't been easy. Don't get me wrong. Like the path of an entrepreneur,
yeah.
and we're working now with high level executives, and it is really challenging. So, but it's rewarding now.
Mm,
So that's the excitement behind it. Then I went to Subiaco
yeah.
and captained a club over there. It's just Subiaco Football Club in the Waffle, and we had some success there. And then I worked at the Freo Football Club,
Mhm.
and multiple other clubs after that. So I just followed my passion, Wayne. Quite simply, I followed my passion, and I didn't know the journey ahead. And there wouldn't be too much I'd change. Honestly, there are some things I'd change, definitely, but not a lot.
Mm, yeah. I know you speak in certain areas. You talk about during the football when you first had the opportunity to play at a senior level. You came into the arena, if you like, with high expectation, based on your background. You'd received lots of acknowledgements, awards, etc. But when you hit that high level, something changed, and you weren't the best anymore. How did that play into the journey that transpired?
So one, I don't think I was 100% committed to the cause. I was always touted as that young man that was going to easily walk into a club somewhat.
Right.
There was also question marks against my commitment, my attitude. I would assume from the recruiters. And uh, so that unfolded, right? And so in essence, uh, the the pressure, quite simply, was that. It was the pressure that got
Mm.
me. And, you know, if you can't handle pressure, you quite simply, you're precious. And I was
Right.
precious. When pressure came on, I capitulated. In fact, for a young man who really went through his childhood, winning nearly every award in the competition till about under 16s, and
Yep.
he never had an injury as such. But when the pressure went on, I started to see that I started to crack in injuries. I started to see other players that I was playing with crack with injuries. And I
Mm.
thought there may be a connection to the to the way you process or the confidence you have. And then I'm sort of a firm believer now. In fact, I wrote a book about it, Injury Free,
Right.
about that is the more, if you can't handle pressure, and I work with athletes all around Australia with this, and we get them into the best form ever, because there's an insecurity, there's a lack of
Mm.
self-worth, there's low confidence, there's not a great belief that. So when you go to the AFL, you think, I'm going to do it, it's going to be easy. Well, you're now amongst the elite,
Yeah.
and then you get found out pretty quickly if you don't have the skills and tools to cope in that type of environment.
Yeah. And I can associate with what you're talking about. I know when we talk with a lot of our clients, and we do a lot with executive talent, we often say that we all have a degree of natural talent, but it's
Mm,
the natural talent only takes you so far. And
yeah.
you'll reach a point where those who have that right attitude, they have the commitment, they have the dedication, etc., will catch up to you and overtake you if you're not
Mm.
aware of it. And I'm wondering how much that was a factor for you.
Yeah, I think having worked now with hundreds of athletes, I mean, world-class boxers, lots of all Australian footballers, and
Mm.
you can't do it on your own. You really need a support team around you, because, as
Hmm.
you said, you certain skill sets. It's very rare to get someone who can just whistle through the elite life by
Yeah.
themselves and not ask for, or at least fall in a hole and get pulled out by someone else, right?
Mm.
And so that's key. So you need to sharpen, like in the AFL and rugby and any sport around the world. The biomechanics and the chemists and the physios and so forth. They've got the human body to 100% capacity just about now.
Mm.
And when I was a leadership coach at the Western Bulldogs in the AFL, I used to ask the head of science, human science, and that, how do you know when someone's about to get injured? And they couldn't really pick it, right?
Yeah.
Because I'd get them to capacity and they'd back them away, but then bang, a hamstring goes and so forth. So they still don't know. But when you bring up the mind, when you bring up the inner self-worth, when you bring up the intuition, when you bring up the master within you to learn and to listen and to understand your body better, you
Mm.
remove your ego and you let this master, we call it the child and master, let this innate master come within you,
Yeah.
which is pure intelligence. You can get connected to yourself on a whole nother level, which prevents injury.
Mm.
And so you're listening on another level. And so that's sort of the element I went down. That's what I teach with my athletes and
Right.
executives and people with health issues. I mean, we've helped people that are, on in serious sickness, not far to go before it's over, and help them back as well, because the body, sorry, we're going off course here, but it's sort of the
Right.
right place. But the body is a reflection of the mind as well. So it's all related. So body, mind, and soul all connected, all working at 100% capacity. Then you're really in your peak element to live the life you want to live, and reach your dreams at the same time. Because I've seen unbelievable things take place very quickly when people do this.
Mm.
From out and gone and trodden down, AFL career over, to premiership captain, all Australian in a matter of a couple of years. It's just unbelievable.
Yeah. I'm a big believer myself. So I'm a cancer survivor, and I firmly believe that, you know, my surgeon said to my wife, it's so advanced, we don't give you a lot of hope. I'm a firm believer in the mental capacity to play its hand if you allow it, and that's,
Yeah.
you know, to a point what you're talking about to a large extent. I noticed when you were talking about you're in Southport, I think it was, and you were starting on this transition from the sports player to the business person, the entrepreneur, and you were developing your interest in, you know, the spiritual world and that journey. I think I heard you talk about somewhere you found a mentor, and I'm just curious how
Mm-hmm.
much that person played a role.
Significant, significant. So I was seeking guidance,
Right.
probably without knowing it. I was on the hunt. I was devouring every type of information I could in this space, and I couldn't get enough of it. Um, and so I stumbled across this elderly gentleman who would have been in his late 60s, and he had a very deep connection to himself. And he and I met quite often for nearly 3 or 4 years, maybe every 3 weeks. He resided up on the Gold Coast, and like still
Mm,
does. And it was a mind-blowing experience to sit in his energy as well, mind you.
right.
And he taught me a lot about myself. And that's when I started to really change. I ate it up. I absorbed it. But like when you're in the room with, I would say, someone of that level of energy and genius, and it's a very weird thing to say because maybe it was just my immaturity at the time, but I've never really met anyone like it since
Mhm.
who can I can actually I walked out scrambled. In fact, a lot of my athletes, in particular, and clients, they will walk out scrambled, and they would take notes down, and there'd be like a head crackling going on in the brain, and that's exactly what happened to me. And that's what I do now to my clients, because you have to break it to recreate it, right? Somewhat,
Yeah.
and so that's what happened with this gentleman, Bruce, and so he just went on this journey together, Wayne, and then he sort of gave me what I needed to sort of move into this space. I've had another one since then. I had my sister was getting coached by a leadership coach who was teaching meditation in
Mhm.
corporate and government. So then I rang him up out of the blue and said, "Hey, listen, I could really do. Could I buy a coffee?" And then I met with Steve, and then some years later, maybe a year and a half later, after dragging him out of the office for a coffee and learning a bit about that, he employed me, and so I became his middle management coach, traveling all around Australia as a corporate and government middle manager coach, and I was running, culture classes, meditation classes, and all those sorts of things. So it's always paid off for me,
Right.
to just reach out and ask for assistance with someone who is wise and in their own way, that has the ability to help me fast track myself.
You remind me of a quote, and I think it was by Lao Tzu, the Chinese philosopher, something
Mm.
like, "When the student is ready, the teacher will appear." And I guess
Yes.
you were at
Yeah.
that point, you've been the student, and you were lucky
Mm.
enough to stumble on the mentor, and you know, the rest is history, as they say. So yeah, very, very nice.
Yeah.
Um, as you look now where you are today and you look back at that period, any major learning that you now take with you as part of your program with your clients to help them either transition themselves or avoid the same pitfalls that you're in?
So the systems that I've designed, so we run 1 hour a week group coaching. Okay. And then that's for everybody that wants to just improve themselves. It doesn't matter where
Mhm.
they come from, because we focus in on neuroplasticity, neuroscience, and understanding how to create significant change in a short amount of time.
Right.
And so Yeah, but the process that we put people through, our clients through, is a blend. It's like positive psychology, neuro linguistic programming, ancient
Hmm.
philosophies, heart math technology, and I should say teachings, which is heart coherence, which is modern day
Yeah.
science. We've got a lot of my tools and techniques that I've used over the
Hmm.
course of years.
Hmm.
So it's like a mosaic of the mind pulled together.
Right.
Um, and so we just take them on that journey. But because you can't, in my opinion, so there's education and transformation, right? So I was doing education with these guys, and they would do a meditation course, or they would get some coaching, and yeah, you'd have some significant change, but you hadn't created new habits along the way. So
Right.
we've got to create new habits. You've got to change your subconscious mind if you want to create sustainable and long-lasting change.
Yep.
And so these parts were pulled together over the course of many, many years of trial and error and research and development before I could actually hand on heart say that's the way to go. So in each weekly session, there's multiple different layers to it. So it's because you can't feed a baby a steak, right? You've got to edge people up along the way, and they will grab onto what they need to at the right time, because it's more mentoring forward. Say, listen, I've got the fast track here for you to
Yep.
elevate yourself into the best version of yourself very quickly. You've got to walk it. All
Mm.
right. And that means, when it comes to neuroscience, that means you've to activate the brain into, because you are what you think. Your life flows where your thinking goes.
Yes.
And so because of that, we have a future focused sort of program. We don't really dredge the past up, because what's the point? And so we take people on this journey. So the requirement of that is for neuroscience. Well, it takes 7 to 30 minutes a day on focused intention on where you want to take your life, and understand how you're feeling and thinking. And so once you understand the science behind this, it's quite a lot of fun. So you go, okay, we use technology, 7 to 30 minutes a day, activate the app, figure out if I'm feeling off, I'm thinking off, I'm feeling off, I'm thinking off. So then what am I thinking? And then we change the script, and then we change the feeling. And after a while, after 21 days, the record gets scratched. And that means, just if you constantly said, I'm no good, or,
Yeah.
whatever it may be, then and you can't start saying, well, I'm actually great. I'm actually happy with life. I'm happy with life. I'm happy with life. I'm excited by the day. I'm excited by the day. The record scratches to the point where it starts singing that song. And then after 63 days, the record's set 63 days plus, right? I can go up to 100 days. It just depends on how scratched your record is, or how the
Mm.
program is. And then after a while, people start seeing significant shifts in themselves, where they're like, geez, I've just changed. It's like learning to drive a car, Wayne. You got the lessons. Back in our days, we had the clutch and the pedal and so forth.
Yeah.
And then all of a sudden you were a driver, but you never thought back, oh, I learned to drive the car. You're just a driver. And that's what happens with our clients. They just become another version of themselves, because they've
Mm.
scratched and recreated their own song to life. And so, to sort of say there's certain elements, I'd say neuroscience if you don't change the brain, you don't change anyone,
Mm.
right? So we've got to change the way we process reality. We've got to understand that everything out here is a reflection of what's happening in here. And so it's like, even like Jesus Christ and all the major philosophers of the world have always said the answer's within.
Mm.
But most people are looking to change out here. I mean, the mirror reflection model I love is
Yes.
is everyone is a teacher in front of you. So there's not one person who passes your life that isn't a teacher to you. But they're hidden in disguise as another person, right? But in essence, we're all one, right?
Mm.
And so if we're all one, then there has to be a connection between the people in your life, because they're in your life for a reason. So what's the lesson that I'm here to be? And after a while, you'll find that once you got that lesson from your teachers, which is your friends, family, colleagues, business partners, kids, you'll find that that issue will disappear. And then the next one will come up, until you keep working on yourself enough to
Mm.
become free and in flow. And when you become free, when you become in flow with life, life flows to you, as opposed to you chasing life, because you've got the master key now of understanding that everything's perfect. And it sounds woo woo wah wah, but it's all about taking action too. But that's reality. When you get in flow, like a footballer, when they're in flow, we teach footballers and boxers and athletes to get in flow. How do
Yep.
they get in flow? How do they get on that ground and absolutely maximize that 2 hours or 1 hour in the best of their ability? Now, a lot of that flow for a performance, elite performance, actually starts on the Monday. right? So getting your Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday right, by getting in flow then, and then going to the game empty. And then once you hit the track, then you find that you're running on a sixth sense, like you've got more energy because the mind's free,
Mhm.
and you're playing with more fun and passion. And so it's probably heading, because it's a big question you asked me, is because
I
how
know.
many things could I say are the key things? There's just so many. And that's why I said you can't feed a baby a steak, because over the course of our 12-week programs, we've got another 12-week, then we've got biohacking programs. There's just probably 80 different elements to it, that either
Yeah.
activities or an activation or an awareness factor, or so forth.
And I'm sure you've created a lot of intrigue for the listeners. So one of the things you're talking about, I don't know if people can focus on that on the screen, but this is your Quality Mind app, which is one of the central
Mhm.
tools that you use. Um, and it's free to download. You can take a premium prescription or subscription, I believe. But it's
Yeah, can't
part
do
of
that.
that.
Yeah, it's only available for free, but only
Right.
our clients will get access to premium.
Okay, okay, great. But it's part of your personal activation system, if I have that correct, right?
Yeah.
So it forms one of the core elements of the tool, the primary product that you're using with your clients, and you've spoken a lot about some of the elements of that activation
Yeah.
system, right? Right. Now, you mentioned earlier about your first business, I think it was Engage and Grow Global. And
That's
that's the
right.
one you sold, if I'm correct.
That's right. That's right.
Yeah.
So just before COVID. Mhm.
Right. Okay. So
Yep.
now you're running this Global Minds, Quality Minds Global.
Yep.
How did you get into this, in running this business that just exploded for you? I mean, it sounds like you had the Midas touch, but I don't believe so much that people are that fortunate. I think we work a lot for our achievements. I'm sure it wasn't just an easy road into the business world,
Were you talking about Engage and Grow or Quality Mind?
whichever business, but
Either or.
yeah.
Well,
So
it's like Engage and Grow Engage and Grow. I just knew I had something that the world didn't have, and I
okay,
knew that the world would accept it, because I was working with multiple cultures. It was cultural diverse. It was just basically, it was ready for, the world.
yeah,
And I just kept pounding away. I was making sure my mornings were good. I had high productivity. Don't get me wrong, like I'll have a great time on the weekends,
yeah,
and not regret it. Sometimes I do. So I mean, even my partner was like, give it up, Rich. Like, it's just, but I just kept at it. I just knew, I had this belief that it was going to blow, and I just had to hold on, and it did. I just made the right call at the right time. But the story's
mhm,
unbelievable. If I actually sat you down and tell you the actual story, how I got engaged and grow to the globe, it's nearly unbelievable. But we don't have
yeah,
time for that. But and it's a great story. So then I realized throughout engage and grow that I learned how to commercialize globally, and
okay,
and what's important is, what I learned more in that business is a lot of business integrity. I learned that everyone has to win. I learned, you say, you've got to refine your model to make sure that client, coach, head office has to win.
mhm,
And my business, because I coach other coaches, my main goal now is to make them wealthy. I've got a couple of coaches now and then others building now to become, who have been or are on their way to become seven-figure coaches in 3 or 4 years. That's a
mm,
significant thing. If you're starting out for the first time in a coaching space, you're going to literally, if you're on your own, you're lucky to survive after 5 years.
yeah,
So this is the sort of these are the this is the I've learned over the course of the years, with understanding trademarks and legalities in all different countries,
mhm,
multilingual and speaking on stage, and cultures. Another whole thing we need to understand. So with Quality
absolutely,
Mind, I just, like, once I sold Engage and Grow, I was like, because this was the cornerstone to who Rich Maloney is, because I was started with Quality Mind right back there, and then
yes,
now I could bring it to life. So my Engage and Grow business was like my son.
mm,
So I had to give my son away. It was very, it was but hard to do, and I had so many coaches, hundreds and hundreds of coaches who relied on me. And I was like, well, I've got to hand over my child now. So then I've had to bring this other child up. And don't get me wrong, I used to say this to my partner at the time. So um, with quality mind, there's times where, and this is important for entrepreneurs and entrepreneur partners to understand,
Right.
or anyone starting a business, is when the business isn't going the way you want it to go, you need to say this sort of things to your partners. Like it's like your child is growing up, and then you hit a crossroad and it doesn't fly so well, and it's like your child's gotten sick or been hit by a car, right?
Mm,
So you got to say. I used to say to my partner, I said, look, my child is needs attention. I've got to hold my child because it's 2 years old, and you wouldn't leave a child, would you? And that's the way I treated my business, like a family member. And
right.
so I nurtured it. If you fall out of love with your business, you more or less you're in trouble. So you got to stay in love with your business, because if you fall out of love with your child, you're going to get backlash in the future.
Mm,
Right. So you got to love what you're doing. You've got to buy into what you're doing, no matter how hard the days are in the morning, at night, no
yes.
matter if there's not talking to you, which is the element, which is equivalent not having any money in the bank.
Mm,
It's like suffocating, but you've just got to keep at it, knocking on doors and keep learning. The more you learn, the more you earn.
mm,
And so people hit the threshold a lot of times and they just go, well, that's a bit too difficult. It's like, well, if you want to get out there and be a global coach, you've got to earn your right, and earn your right is really important. So not only earn your right to your database and influences, is earn your right to yourself, right? It's because you've got to layer up. You've got to layer
mm,
up all the way.
right.
That's when you become recognized in this industry as a leader. And really at its
Mm,
core, uh, there's hundreds of coaches I had with Engage and Grow, and the coaches coming through 40, 50 now, I'm teaching them really at its core how to be authentic and in-flow leaders
right.
along the way. So if you really want to lead the charge in mental wellness, one, you've got to be it. Two, you've got to radiate it, like your energy needs to be there. And three, you've got to take significant action.
Mm,
In when the wind's blowing in, you've got to keep charging through the winds.
nice metaphor. I watched a video of you, by the way, in when you were at Misty Mountain in the
Oh yeah.
mountains in New South Wales. So that was a couple of years ago.
Mm.
But I mean, is that type of thing something you practice on an annual basis, or was that a one-off? That particular.
So
Um,
yeah, well, that's a retreat in the Blue Mountains in the mountains of northern, well, New South Wales, and
yeah.
there's a renowned I've forgotten her name now. There's a renowned leader out there. She's quite into organics and into vegetarian,
Mhm,
and so I really like the sound of it. And that was walking on the grass every day. I was like really like rurally, but yeah, definitely. Like I'm actually looking at doing another one very soon. I might head overseas for it or up to Byron
mhm,
Bay, but
right.
at least once a year. Having said that, we run them ourselves.
Okay.
In fact, I'm running with my Mind Mentors, which is a conference retreat in the Blue Mountains in a few months. There's about 20 of us getting in there for 3 days, which I'll lead. But we used to run them in Bali too. Let's see, we work so hard. We have so many responsibilities. We're bombarded with just pressure, bad media, um, bad habits, uncertainty. So taking time out to detox from life
Yeah.
allows you, obviously, this is obvious to everyone, but like this is critical to everyone. It's like critical. And it's not about like, I'm not into woo-woo stuff. I'm not really into anything that isn't proven,
Yeah.
but I love to be able to fall into an environment where there's wise people, there's good energy, there's good body relaxation and mind, and stop, just stop. Because I actually love living a fast-paced life, believe it or not. But then there's an element that I need to go introverted for a little while and to go into my creative space.
Yeah, I think many people would benefit from doing that. I think in the world today, a world of business where so much on and very seldom off, right? And it
Yeah,
takes its toll. So yeah, very good. Let's jump into one of your books. I know you mentioned Injury Free. That I haven't read that one. I'm
Mm.
sorry. The one I read was Stress Free, and which is the most recent, by the way.
Yeah, stress free.
Stress Free.
I created that just on when COVID was here to help people out.
Right. Well, let's jump into that a
Mm.
little bit because it really, for me, helped frame the business you're in and what you do. I don't want to go into too deep. We want people to buy the book, but
Yeah.
if we can just sort of
Mm.
paint a bit of a broad picture about what it's all about and where it came from, what was the purpose behind writing it?
So the purpose was initially to help people out who were entering COVID with me. And I was like, okay, well, I have the information I'd love to share with people who are now lonely or caught in a part of the world that they can't escape. And then, and so yeah, the essence of the book is quite simply how to thrive under pressure in unprecedented times.
Mm,
Um, which is COVID. But quite simply, it's a reflection of my entire management of myself, but in a way that that's put in little actions and activities and a bit of awareness along the way. But
yeah,
conquering yourself is the number one thing in life, in my opinion. Emotional intelligence, introspection depends on what your goals are and who you want
yeah,
to become. Myself,
yeah,
I enjoy being not perfect too, Wayne. I enjoy being, perfectly imperfect. I enjoy being human, knowing full well that I don't know why I'm here, and I reckon it's a good thing because,
keep searching.
we're in the veil of forgetfulness, and that's a
Yeah,
really perfect thing because if we actually knew who we are and why we're here, well, then you would put your feet up and smoke a cigar and fill yourself up with a beautiful grain Shiraz, right? But we don't know. And I love the puzzle behind that is because I'm just going day by day. Sometimes I do the right thing to myself and, sometimes I'm learning.
yeah,
And so understanding, I guess, is seeing yourself more universally. And the more you step outside yourself and to understand who you really are in a way that's not really understood because we don't really know. We know that we may be part of some universal connection and this, that, and the other, but the fact is we're not supposed to know. But then and sort of unpacking what you've become. So I've become this way. I get triggered with this. I'm not eating well. I'm judging myself on this, and see you're not happy with what you've become. So the more we peel back to who we truly are,
mm,
then magic starts to happen, and then understanding within us that we've actually got three minds, and that really means is like um, so we've got a child mind, which is really, the mind that is the control freak. It's the ego, it's the monkey mind, whatever people want to call it. It's the child mind, and that's role quite simply is to keep you safe. And so, but see, we've given it far too much power. And so we understood at the age of 16, 17, 18 that, I'm pretty safe now. I know how to cross the road. I know who's full of shit. And I know who, well, that still bothers me. It's not bothers me, but there are still people like that. But you get my point. And so, but because we haven't harnessed the ability to understand that 14-year-old now needs to be parked a little bit, because on the other side, that 14-year-old inside us is a master within us. And that master within us is our pure intelligence, is our quiet space, is what's why meditation seems to go the test of time for the last 200, 300, 400 years, because it works. I'm not saying you need to meditate every day, but at least absorbing and connecting to who you truly are. And this is about understanding your gut feeling. It's understanding the innate wisdom that comes through and listening to it occasionally, which has a different language to it somewhat. It's not just linear. And then getting in touch with this master within us. But to do that, as that's mind one, mind two, you've got to sort of sit in the coach's box
yeah,
and go, okay, so here's my thoughts. My thoughts are carrying on like I'm unworried about the future. I shouldn't send that email. They don't like me. So there's your 14-year-old running your show. Right. So most people really don't realize that their 14-year-old, they're being mentored by a 14-year-old or 15-year-old, whatever you want to call that mentality of that age. And so once they start realizing that the mentor within them, the child is a child, then you can start peeling that back. And after a while, you start moving your attention away from the child mind and into this more masterful mind, and
mhm,
you can get more energy, or you do get more energy from it. You get more empathy, more understanding. You live more heart coherent life. You don't judge as much. and you're sort of working with, and that's who we truly are, because we come from the essence of love at its core. Like when the baby comes out, it's pure love. You can feel it when a puppy is here. It's another feeling. So going back to that energy, and also there's a whole well of energy in this masterful self that is untapped, and that's what I do with athletes. Is once they start really edging into this master self, there's a
Yeah.
whole nother level of energy, and that energy is suppressed because the child is taken the show, right? So does that make sense so far?
Yep. Yep.
Um, and so the child master. So what we say is get in the coach's box and see where you're feeling and what you're thinking, and just know where you are, and all of a sudden you can start navigating where you want to spend your time. And after a while, after when you kick into neuroscience and you spend more time over your mastermind and your innate intelligence, and it's a lovely feeling as well, but it's a bit weird at the start. Then you
Mm.
actually turn into your master self, because it's a focus on the 21 days, 7 to 30 minutes a day. All of a sudden we're building more masterful people around us, and the child mind pops up occasionally, but not as much. So instead of worrying about something for days on ends, then you get to the point you worry about it for 2 hours, and you get to the point you worry about it for 20 minutes, and you get to the point you worry about 2 minutes, and then
Yeah.
you're sort of mastering yourself, right? Does that sort of give you
Yeah,
a
for
feel?
sure. And without going too deep into it, I mean, that's where your app also plays a big part with the I forget what they're actually called, the thought um,
Thought shopping.
thought shopping. Yeah, sorry. And you start to then overwrite, or if you put it into neuroscience terms, we start to look at the neuroplasticity and rewire
Yeah.
the habits, or the hardwiring that is there already. We start to be able to change that by overriding those negative thoughts with positive statements
Yeah.
through this
Yeah.
thought shopping process, right? So yeah, look,
Mm.
I think the process is very sound, and as you've said, it's supported these last couple of decades in particular, now through the studies that are starting to materialize, that are proving what some
Mm.
of the ancient philosophers used to preach, right?
Yeah.
And meditation
Mm.
being one of those. You have, and I don't want you go as deep as you want on it, but you have a process or a methodology that you call the 5 stars. You have five, um,
Yeah.
a process,
You
if you
could say
like,
5 star.
evaluate, retrain. Yeah, the 5 stars. Um, that, for me, after reading the book, that's kind of the central theme, and you work through that, right? So you have the evaluate, the retrain, the clean, the dream, and the live. Um,
Yeah, that's right. Yep. Let's just
yep.
bring it up. Mhm.
So, and you've spoken a lot about that, and under each one of those stars, if you like, you have a whole raft of different things that you educate people on, as well as help them to practice themselves through activities, etc. And this is all in the book, by the way, for the listeners. So um, if what you're listening to and you're hearing from Rich is resonating somehow and you want to go deeper, then I'd really recommend buy the book. I mean, it gives you a great pathway for you to follow and understand exactly what we're talking about. Um, I don't want to go into it now, Rich, unless you want to touch on something in particular. But you've mentioned, the 3 elements that are really, let's say, the core characters of the book. Right?
Yeah.
So, so the child mind, the soul, or the mastermind, and then the third party, the coach that you need to be able to play. Yeah. So
Mm.
yeah, very very good. Is there anything in the book in particular that jumps out as you're thinking about it that is relevant to the whole business that you're in at the moment?
I guess there's many things, but to zone in on one, and this is your listeners can get this for free as well if they want, is we use a scorecard, like a life scorecard.
Mm,
So having your body, mind, and soul really aligned, and is really the fastest way to get in flow.
right.
And so there's 9 quick questions. They can have a play around with that. They can get a free report emailed to them straight away. They've also got a free coaching session if they wanted to sort of jump into it further.
Nice.
But that can give you a visual,
Yeah.
and a visual means it's a pie chart sort of thing, and then you can see where the compression is, and you can see where you're doing well. So we really measure on that as well every couple of weeks with our programs to see, okay, well, I'm lacking in this area of excitement. So there's my self-talk's bad. I'm not letting go of forgiveness of self and forgiveness of others. So you can see where you need to, and if you want to improve, because once you get the pie chart out, your life gets in flow. It's crazy. So after I started to get all these clients and athletes in flow, I started to see, okay, so what areas improved? And there's those 9 areas in that scorecard. So that's available to the listeners, and you can see it in the book. There are other clients that have gone down the track and played with that. But there are other aspects of that. But I think for the matter of time, there's a good starting point.
I did mine last night, by the way. And thank you. Now I have many areas to put some extra focus into. So we could be talking. There is an area in the book, by the way, that I did want to just highlight for our listeners, because our listeners, Rich, are primarily leaders at some level. You have an area in there under the 4th star, which is dream, and it's talking about building a stress-free dream team, and it's focused specifically on leadership in this context. And so there is a great section in there to read, if you're a leader, about things that you can do to immediately alter the state of that team environment and to build it and create that fun, that engagement. And then, of course, as we're all trying to do, reap the benefits of having a high-performing team. I mean, so there's a lot in there that people can go through.
Well, like engagement, and this is the other book I co-wrote with Marshall Goldsmith and Brad Sugars and Mark Thompson in America, in Vegas. So this is the 6 stages to building highly engaged employees. So as a leader, it's like we would work with sports teams, and I'd fix the leaders, and the club would have an enormous success very quickly. And I mean, I activated them. I just activated them. They're dormant leaders there. And so engagement begins and ends with the managers and the leaders. Right. So once you work with that level there, and then you can get your team activated, because with employee engagement, significant lows and only getting worse sometimes. It's about the leader. So anyway, there's a good idea. You did mention that there's there, but you can also get that as well. And that's a great read, because it's a video book as well. With Marshall Goldsmith, who don't know, he's quite a significant CEO coach in the States.
Yeah, one of my adopted mentors, I would say. What's really interesting, Rich, is I didn't know that you were involved in that book. I've read that book, so we could have spent time talking about that book as well. So very good.
There you go.
Very nice.
Yeah.
So great conversation. Look, time's always against us, but so much that we could talk about. Any final words of wisdom for our listeners that we haven't touched on that you think is important?
No, I just think if you're listening to this podcast, you're obviously taking yourself seriously, and so you should. The responsibility of leadership in this day and age right now is more important than ever. And so designing and honing your skills as a leader, because people are lost. There's a lot more people out there that are floundering, that are hurting, and you need to lead by example. So I just want to give your listeners a high five and a high level of credit and appreciation for your being here, because it's easy to do nothing. But continually look at yourself, continually ask for help, continually get mentors, continually keep evolving. Don't sit still. Because the other thing, and I'll finish on this, is what I really enjoy the most out of what I do, one is when I help leaders become the best version of themselves, their family feel the impact of that. Their kids, the legacy of the family changes from anxious to relaxed, from out of control to controlled, and then all of a sudden it permeates all the way through. So I've seen unbelievable stories happen very quickly. So take yourself seriously as a leader, but don't take yourself too seriously as a human being, because we're all imperfectly perfect.
Very nice. Thank you for that. So, Rich Maloney, great having you on as a guest on the ET Project. Where can people go follow you. I know I'm certainly following you now. I've got your books. I've got a couple more in mind. So where can people go and connect with you, understand more about what you're doing?
So the best place is qualitymindglobal.com. You can download the free scorecard there on that site. You can see me on LinkedIn, Rich Maloney. And so other than that, I can send out a link to the scorecard too to your listeners. And that's where you'll find me, Wayne. It's been an absolute pleasure. And thanks to all the listeners that have been hanging around.
Very good. Thank you for that. We will put all the links in the show notes, listeners. So as usual, go there and that'll be a great place to start from. So thank you, Rich.
So what are you waiting for? Hit the subscribe button below and click on the bell icon so I can pop up in your feed occasionally with a great tip for your ultimate growth.